The dead don't speak, except when they do. Marcus Chen stood at the entrance of the excavation chamber, watching the xenoarchaeology team work in frustrated silence around the obsidian sphere they'd uncovered 3 weeks ago on Kepler for Furtabi, and he wondered why Dr. Velith had summoned him all the way from the orbital station for what seemed like a standard artifact recovery. The sphere sat in the center of the chamber like a miniature moon, perfectly smooth, perfectly black, perfectly unresponsive to every scan, probe, and analysis the team had thrown at it. Marcus was just a human liaison, a glorified coordinator, making sure the multi-species expedition stayed on schedule and under budget. He had no business being down here, but Velith's message had been insistent, almost desperate. And so here he stood, watching a dozen scientists from 6 different species examine something that refused to give up its secrets. The air tasted like copper and ancient dust. The chamber walls were covered in spiraling symbols that predated every known language in the galaxy by at least 50,000 years. The civilization that built this place had vanished without a trace, leaving only empty cities and unanswered questions. Marcus took one step forward into the chamber, and the universe held its breath. The sphere erupted with light, not gradually, not with any warning, but instantaneously, like someone had ignited a star in the palm of their hand. The obsidian surface dissolved into cascading waves of silver and blue, patterns racing across its surface in mathematical perfection. Every instrument in the chamber screamed. The symbols on the walls blazed to life, pulsing in rhythm with the sphere. Marcus stumbled backward, his heart hammering against his ribs, and the sphere's light followed him, tendrils of luminescence, reaching out like it was trying to touch him, to confirm he was real. "Don't move." The voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. Lyra, the expedition's lead xenoarchaeologist, stood frozen at her workstation, her platinum hair seeming to float in the energy discharge that now filled the room. Her pointed ears twitched with concentration, her luminescent skin reflecting the sphere's glow. She was Ethari, a species known for their patient, methodical approach to unraveling the past. Marcus had worked with her for 6 months, had shared countless meals and mission reports, had noticed the way her eyes shifted from silver to gold when she was excited about a discovery. Right now, those eyes were locked on him with an intensity that made him forget how to breathe. "What did I do?" Marcus managed to ask, his voice barely audible over the thrumming energy that filled the chamber. Lyra's fingers flew across her console, recording everything. "You're human," she said, and it sounded like an accusation and a revelation all at once. The other scientists had scrambled to the chamber's edges, watching in a mixture of terror and fascination. Dr. Velith, a mantis-like scratch with compound eyes that missed nothing, clicked his mandibles in what Marcus had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. "In 17 years of xenoarchaeology, I have never seen a recognition protocol this specific," Velith said. "The artifact was waiting. It was waiting for a human. But that made no sense. Humanity had only reached the stars 200 years ago. This civilization had died before humans had even discovered fire." Marcus's mind raced through the implications while the sphere continued its light show, and he realized with creeping unease that the patterns weren't random. They were repeating, cycling, like it was asking a question, waiting for an answer. "What does it want?" he asked. Lyra stepped closer, and he noticed her hand trembling slightly as she held out a scanner. She was afraid, he realized, but not of the artifact. She was afraid of being wrong. "Only one way to find out," she said, and there was something in her voice that made his chest tight. "Touch it." Every survival instinct Marcus possessed screamed at him to refuse. But he'd seen the frustration in Lyra's reports, knew this excavation was her first major solo command, knew that the academic council back on Ethers Prime was already questioning whether the resources devoted to this dead world were worth it. If they shut down the dig, she'd lose everything she'd worked for. He'd watched her spend 18-hour days cataloging fragments and ruins, had brought her coffee when she forgot to sleep, had listened to her theories about what this civilization might have been. Somewhere in those long nights, somewhere between her explaining the linguistic patterns of a people 50 millennia gone and him pretending he understood half of it, something had shifted. He cared what happened to her, more than was probably wise. Marcus took a breath and walked toward the sphere. The light intensified with each step, and he swore he could hear something like music, like the universe was humming a song older than stars. His hand extended. His fingers touched the surface. The world exploded into memory. He saw a civilization of beings that looked almost human, but not quite, their eyes too large, their limbs too graceful. He saw cities of impossible beauty, towers that pierced clouds, gardens that floated in the sky. He saw them looking up at the stars with longing, seeing the same thing humanity had seen when it first reached beyond Earth, infinite possibility. But he also saw their doom, a plague, something that attacked their genetic code specifically, something they couldn't fight or cure. He watched them die, not in years, but in decades, their population collapsing, their cities going silent, and he saw their final act, not weapons, not warnings, a gift. They knew, Marcus whispered, and his voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. They knew we'd come. They knew humans would eventually reach the stars. The visions continued, flooding his consciousness. The dying civilization had studied the cosmos, had found Earth, had seen the early humans struggling to survive and recognized something of themselves in that desperate climb toward the future. They couldn't save themselves, but they could leave something behind. The sphere wasn't a database or a monument. It was a seed. Marcus felt knowledge pouring into his mind, not overwhelming, but organized, careful. Medical technology centuries beyond anything the galactic community possessed. Clean energy generation, atmospheric restoration techniques, not weapons, not power. Tools to build, tools to heal, tools to make sure no other species had to die helplessly like they did. The connection broke, and Marcus collapsed. Strong arms caught him, and he realized Lyra had crossed the chamber without hesitation, was holding him like she was afraid he might disappear. Her eyes were wide, shifting rapidly through colors he'd never seen before, emotions playing across her face too fast to name. I felt it, she breathed, through the sensors. I felt the data transfer. Marcus, do you understand what this means? He did. And he didn't. His head was spinning, full of information he barely understood, but somehow knew with absolute certainty. The sphere had gone dark again, its purpose fulfilled, but the symbols on the walls still glowed softly, like nightlights left on for children. They called themselves the Inheritors, Marcus said slowly, letting Lyra help him to a sitting position. She didn't let go of his arm, and he didn't ask her to. They believed every species that reached the stars inherited responsibility for those that came after. They couldn't pass their legacy to their own children, so they left it for us, for humanity, for the youngest species, the ones they hoped would do better. Dr. Velith approached cautiously, his movements slow and deliberate. The data transfer, he clicked. It went into you. The information is in your neural patterns. It's meant to be shared, Marcus said. He could feel the structure of it in his thoughts, elegant and accessible. Any human can receive it, and once we understand it, we can translate it for other species. But they wanted humanity to be the bridge, the mediators. They saw something in us. Lyra made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. 50,000 years. They've been waiting 50,000 years to give this gift, and they chose humanity. Do you know what the academic council said about humans when you first joined the galactic community? That you were too young, too impulsive, too emotional. What changed their mind? Marcus asked, though he could see the answer in her face. Nothing, she said softly. Most species still think that, but the Inheritors saw what I see. What I've seen working with you these past months. Humans don't just survive. You reach back. You pull others up with you. The chamber had gone quiet, except for the soft whir of instruments recording everything. The other scientists maintained a respectful distance, understanding they were witnessing something historic. Marcus looked at the now dark sphere, then at Lyra, still close enough that he could see the slight luminescence of her skin, the way her silver eyes had settled into a warm gold. I need to tell you something, he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. And you can tell me it's the post-telepathic download endorphins talking, but I don't think it is. Her expression was unreadable. Tell me. I've spent 6 months watching you piece together the story of a dead civilization with nothing but fragments and faith. I've watched you defend your theories to people who thought you were wasting time. I've watched you care about people who've been gone for 50,000 years like they mattered. Like their story deserved to be told. He took a breath. The Inheritors chose humanity to carry their legacy. But if I get to choose who stands beside me, I'll we figure out what to do with it. I choose you. Not because you're Ethari or I'm human, but because you're brilliant and stubborn, and you see value where others see ruins. Lyra's eyes shifted through 3 distinct colors in rapid succession. and he knew her well enough now to recognize surprise, joy, and fear chasing each other through her thoughts. That's not post-telepathic download endorphins, she said quietly. That's potentially very complicated given interspecies relationship protocols and the fact that we have to write a joint report about this that will be read by every major government in the galactic community. I know, Marcus said, but is it unwelcome? She was quiet for a moment that stretched like hours. Then she smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. Ask me again when you're not sitting on the floor of an ancient temple, having just had an entire civilization's knowledge downloaded into your brain. That's not a no, he pointed out. It's not a no, she agreed, and squeezed his arm gently before standing. She offered him her hand, and he took it, letting her pull him to his feet. They stood there for a moment, hands still clasped, the chamber glowing softly around them like the universe was giving its approval. Then Dr. Velith cleared his throat equivalent with a pointed click. While I am pleased you both are not dead and possibly developing romantic attachment that will make expedition reports awkward, we have a significant situation. The knowledge in Marcus Chen's neural patterns could reshape galactic civilization. It will need to be verified, cataloged, shared. This will take years, decades, and it will need to be done correctly. Lyra's expression shifted into her professional mask, but she didn't let go of Marcus's hand. We'll need a dedicated research team. Multi-species, multi-discipline. This isn't just xenoarchaeology anymore. This is first contact with a dead civilization's last wish. I have a thought about that, Marcus said, the Inheritors' knowledge settling into clearer patterns in his mind. They didn't just leave information. They left a test. The sphere only activated for humans because they wanted to see what we'd do with it. Whether we'd hoard it or share it. Whether we'd live up to what they saw in us. He looked at Lyra, then at Velith, then at the gathered scientists who represented a dozen different homeworlds and evolutionary paths. They believed every species that reaches the stars inherits responsibility for those that come after. So here's what I propose. We share everything, openly, freely. We use what they gave us to help every species in the galactic community. We prove they were right to wait for us. There was silence in the chamber. Then slowly, deliberately, Dr. Velith clicked his mandibles in the scratch gesture of profound respect. That, he said, is why they chose humans. Also why I called you down here, Marcus Chen. I suspected the artifact was waiting for something specific. Your species has a particular energy signature, a genetic marker we still do not fully understand. I had a hypothesis. I am pleased it did not kill you. You could have mentioned the possibility of death before I touched it, Marcus said dryly. Velith's compound eyes glittered with what might have been humor. You touched it before I could warn you. Very human. Impulsive, emotional, brave. He paused. Also effective. I will begin drafting research protocols. You two will be co-leads on this project. Yes? Lyra looked at Marcus, and he saw the question in her eyes. This would bind them together professionally for years, make their relationship even more complicated, subject them to intense scrutiny. It would also be the most important work either of them would ever do. Yes, Marcus said. If Lyra agrees, I agree, she said immediately. Though we're establishing clear professional boundaries and regular breaks for sleep, I've seen how humans work when they're excited about something. You'll burn out in 3 months without proper rest. Deal, Marcus said, and then, because the moment felt like it needed it, added, and when this is all documented, and we've shared the Inheritors' gift with the galaxy, and we're not under quite so much scrutiny, I'm asking you properly. She tilted her head, pointed ears catching the light. Asking me what? To dinner. Somewhere nice. Somewhere not an archaeological dig or a research station cafeteria. Somewhere I can tell you properly that you're the most remarkable person I've ever met, and I'd very much like to see where that goes. The colors in Lyra's eyes did something complex and beautiful. That's a long way away. Years probably. I know, Marcus said. But the Inheritors waited 50,000 years to give their gift to the right people. I can wait a few years to do this right. She laughed. Then, a sound like silver bells. And even though they were standing in the ruins of a dead civilization, with the weight of cosmic responsibility settling onto their shoulders, Marcus felt lighter than he had in months. You're ridiculous, Lyra said, but her tone was warm. Completely ridiculous and sentimental, and very, very human. Is that a problem? No, she said softly. It's really not. The sphere sat silent in the center of the chamber, its purpose fulfilled, its creator's final wish set in motion. Above them, beyond the ruins and the excavation site and the thin atmosphere of Kepler for to be, the stars turned in their eternal dance. Humanity had been chosen to carry a legacy 50 millennia old, not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because a dying civilization had looked at them and seen hope, saw a species that might actually care about the responsibility of reaching the stars. As the team began the careful process of documenting everything, as messages were sent to governments and academic institutions across the galaxy, as the news spread that something extraordinary had been found, Marcus stood beside Lyra and felt the weight and wonder of it all. The Inheritors had given humanity a gift, but they'd also given him something personal, a purpose that mattered, a mystery to solve, and a brilliant, stubborn, remarkable woman who looked at dead civilizations and saw stories worth telling. "What are you thinking?" Lyra asked, her fingers flying across her datapad as she cataloged the symbols on the walls. "That the Inheritors were right," Marcus said. "About what?" "That some things are worth waiting for," he said, and watched her smile without looking up from her work. "The dead don't speak, except when they do. And sometimes what they say changes everything."